February 13th, 2023. This is Roqe. Well, hi there. Welcome to episode 238 of Roqe. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Really, Financial Times? The Islamic Republic has regained the confidence of the people? Lydia from Toronto. Salam Dustan Aziz. Durud bar shoma. Sorry, what did you publish, Financial Times? The regime has regained the confidence of the Iranian people? Here's the thing. Unfortunately, it seems as though, much like Western governments, we clearly need to make the case to Western media that if you're not going to support and amplify or even cover the Iranian people's quest for freedom, at least try not to nakedly promote the propaganda of the Islamic Republic. That is, unless you have some vested interest in the Ayatollahs. To recap, this past weekend, with the anniversary of the Islamic Revolution of 1979 and the associated state-sponsored rallies inside Iran, the Financial Times, a British elite business newspaper, posted an article not just effectively touting the impressive nature of the regime-manufactured demonstrations and quoting requisite supporters and Raisi, but further saying it was a show of government strength with unrest waning in Iran and the regime feeling more in control. Really, Financial Times? Let's untangle this, shall we? And let's dispense with the fact that the same article puts the estimate of those killed during this uprising in Iran at 300, a number dramatically lower than any credible estimates found elsewhere. And let's even put aside the absence of any coverage of the other demonstrations that happened around the world this weekend against this regime, including massive rallies in Paris, Washington, Toronto, and LA, where over 80,000 greeted Reza Pahlavi like a rock star. Nothing about that. Interesting. But let's just take the story from inside Iran. And maybe it's not the writer, it's the editors or publishers, who knows? But it can only be interpreted as the promotion of the regime's PR in this article. Because there was no mention that the demonstrations inside Iran were actually quite small and, well, pathetic for a regime that claims to have the support of the Iranian people and is under attack from all corners on the occasion of what you'd think would be its biggest chance to flex its muscles. In a country of almost 90 million, the most you can muster is a few thousand in Azadi Square, but no mention of that context. Really, Financial Times? There was no mention that Iranian state media apparently duplicated images of demonstrations to pretend that support was widespread and plentiful. There was no mention that a primary state broadcast of the event, marking this 1979 revolution, was interrupted by hackers for almost a minute, shouting "Death to the Islamic Republic" across the Iranian airways before state TV stepped in to shut it down. Regain the confidence of the people. What? There was no mention of the fact that on this day of supposed celebration of the birth of the Islamic Republic, there was lots of evidence of Iranians chanting "Death to the dictator" and "Woman, life, freedom" from their balconies. And there was no mention that, as some reports have shown, paid participants were brought in from Nigeria to march inside Iran for the anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. Does that all sound like a regime that is feeling more in control? Really, Financial Times? What is the agenda here? Because it doesn't seem to be presenting even the postulate of objectivity about the situation in Iran. Is it the job now of Western media to carry the water for this murderous Islamic regime? Surely this was just an innocent mistake. I mean, you wouldn't be doing this for any other reason. The sad reality is that this is what we're up against as a global Iranian community. A worldwide day of massive demonstrations gets trumped in the Financial Times by coverage of a state-sponsored PR from inside Iran, even though it pales in comparison in numbers. Oh, the freedom of Iran will eventually prevail, and real citizens will once again proudly shout the country's name. In the meantime, to the Western media peddling propaganda, you should feel shame. Coming up on this edition of Roqe, popular Iranian-American therapist Dr. Afarin Rajaei joins us from San Diego, and broadcaster, producer, and influencer Shirin Naseri joins us in the Roqe Studio, plus the Roqe Roundtable. This is Roqe, episode 238, Hope and Fear are two sides of the same coin. Here we go. Here we are in the Roqe Studio. I'm actually very excited that Shirin Naseri is in town, the first time in Canada, and she's going to be joining us in the Roqe Studio in a little while. And before that, Dr. Afarin Rajaei will join us from San Diego. She's got quite a popular online presence and deals with. She's a licensed marriage counselor and therapist, but is currently dealing with the trauma of the Iranian community globally, who she has clients, I think, all over the world, and talks about things like hope and fear being two sides of the same coin, hence the title of this episode. So Dr. Afarin Rajaei coming up in just a few moments. Hello, Pega.
Hello.
Hi, Shaya.
Hi, yes, exactly.
I suppose part of what why I'm animated about what the Financial Times wrote or didn't write, acts of commission and acts of omission, nothing about the demonstrations around the world, is because, you and I saw you there, Pega.
Yeah.
We were at actually I was at two demonstrations in Toronto this weekend. Would kind of prefer that there was one big one instead of two competing, but went to one in the early afternoon, one in the late afternoon and Saturday, and as we were energized by seeing videos come out of Australia, and as the day grew, images of demonstrations around the world in each time zone, all over Europe, and then we got to North America, and then of course the crowning achievement of this weekend, that big LA protest.
Yeah, I mean, the videos were incredible to see, the sheer amount of people, the energy, everything.
Reminded me of the big one we had in Toronto
very much
in the fall. That energy is when you get that many people together, and it was a long time coming.
It
LA,
was.
It was like kind of LA, step up already.
Yeah,
you guys are the big Iranian community,
there,
and they really did. I mean, and we had Kushiar saying, on Thursday, one of the people organizing this event, the tech entrepreneur come. Online influencer, and he was saying, we really want this to be, we believe that one giant event gets a lot more traction than a bunch of smaller ones, and I think that was borne out. I mean, there was no coverage sadly of Toronto, and I mean, other than people sharing it online, myself included. I didn't see it in any of our media, but the LA one got some media attention, as it should.
I think City TV locally did a brief coverage of the one in Richmond Hill.
Oh, the Richmond Hill one.
Richmond
Okay.
Hill, yeah.
Right.
So I saw something brief that actually the Iran Lovers group, I think, posted online. So I saw that. But I agree. I mean, even just being there, it felt so different in comparison to, the big one that we had in the fall.
But even then, I mean, that was, I think that was the only one that got some coverage. The media generally doesn't cover our unless there's something epic. And
That's
LA,
right.
It was LA's turn to be epic, and it was epic. It was pretty big. It looked like a big rock and roll party of some kind, and they have all the overhead drone shots, and and of course it's Los Angeles weather.
I know.
Yeah.
Didn't have to trek through snow and mud and whatnot.
Yeah. But I mean, good for them too. The organizers. I mean, there was a real stage and looked like a big sound system, and we'll have to get somebody. I mean, we know so many people who were at that LA rally to represent and tell us what they thought.
A first-hand account for sure.
Yeah. But an energizing weekend in the diaspora, and then this. I mean, it's funny enough. I was doing research when I came across this Financial Times article, because I was actually asking Super P, Parisa, and Shaya, and people in the office. I was kind of saying, is this anniversary of the revolution, isn't this the time when the regime's supposed to get millions of people out on the streets? Presumably, if let's say the regime has let's say the poll that came out recently, that survey that said it's about 15% the support for the regime, which is dismal, of course, and 80% what the regime got in Iran. Let's say that's wrong. Let's say the regime has 40% support, 30% support. Wouldn't 30% of 90 million people responding to, think about polarized countries, think about in the U.S. when when liberals have a big demonstration, and then at least in the last few years, the response from a Republican crowd or Trump lovers would come out and in the huge numbers to sort of show a counter demonstration. Did we see that happening in Iran?
Not at all.
To me, these are the most telling things. There was a crowd. There was a few crowds in different places, but I mean, this is the best the regime. These are the moments that are telling to me, much more so than it's same as when Team Melli won the game and nobody went out on the streets. And it's like, this is the barometer. And then you find out they're bringing people in and they're hiring people and they're, Well,
that's what I was going to say, crowd with an asterisk, because can you really call it a true crowd if you're importing individuals to stand in and make it seem like there's a following or, support or whatever else you want to call it.
Right.
Everything that I saw and everything I've been seeing on social media really points to the contrast of that. There's 2 videos that I saw that I thought were incredible. One was an individual walking around in Azadi Square, offering kotlet.
Yeah.
And I thought, first of all, the bravery of that individual. Yeah. Secondly,
do we have to explain the symbolism of that, or does everybody get it?
I think it's pretty well known.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's pretty well known.
Yeah.
That was the first one. And then the second one was actually a video that I saw from Esfahan. And there was a stage set up with hundreds of chairs for people to attend and watch, I guess, some sort of broadcast or video or something like that. Not one single person was sitting in these chairs.
Oh, really?
And to see that sight, to see the preparation, and to see the fact that no one had shown up was just absolutely incredible. And it really is telling, like you said, So I thought those were some of the videos that I saw that were incredible. And going back to your essay and this article, I think the contrast with that, again, could be seen on social media because there's all this talk of fireworks and celebrations and things like that. But what the article fails to mention, what we haven't talked about yet, is the fact that in the background, having these fireworks and then hearing people yell outside of their buildings, homes, whatever, late into the night, death to the dictator or death to the Islamic Republic and all these things. So to even some of the videos that you see of the fireworks, where I think maybe people
and you hear the chanting in the background.
Exactly.
Death to the Islamic Republic.
I think people had put it saying, in support of the regime, but then if you listen closely enough, you hear people saying death to the Islamic Republic.
It's a weird thing, this what really kind of got me about the article, because so anyway, I'm trying to do some research and about what happened in Iran. Can I get some? And there's not a lot in English. There's some articles in Persian, and then this one kind of jumps out, and it doesn't, because there was something in the Globe and Mail. There was a couple places had articles about the rallies in Iran, and to a certain extent, I feel like that's also peddling the regime propaganda. But they tempered it. Like the headline would be, "Rallies occur in Iran amidst massive protests against," like
That's
that.
Right.
But the Financial Times one was just like,
not a mention.
Great rallies in Iran, everything's, and then that line, which was, the I don't know, what was it, turning the corner, or what's the thing that I was repeating, and regain the confidence of the people. And regain the confidence. That's quite a thing to say.
Such a stretch.
Yeah. Well, right. It's just and then to not mention the rest of the stuff happening in the world. It's such an act of omission.
That's right.
During an act of commission. So,
when you see this amount of ignorance, you think, you would doubt. Maybe they thought that the rallies in Toronto, in LA, and all places on the 22 Bahman, maybe they thought that it's pro-regime.
Right. Well, the writer is in Tehran.
Oh.
So what does that tell you anything? I don't think can you write a highly critical article of the regime if you're isn't the whole point that Western journalists are not in Iran right now, because it's hard to be to actually be objective about and say what's
very telling, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't want to necessarily, I don't know, because sometimes it's the editors who do the headlines and change the thing, so even the publisher can get involved. I don't know what this article is all about, but it's interesting to me that the person is stationed in Tehran and has been for a few years. Right now, not Natalie Amiri or some of the people we know who were in Iran and have subsequently left, and good thing they've left. So it was curious. What did you make of the big all the demonstrations around the world and the images of LA, Shaya?
Yeah, I think the part that the sister of Mohammad Mukhtari hugged Reza Pahlavi, that was the picture that got viral.
That went viral, yeah.
And so
there's something, there's something about Reza Pahlavi being the age he is now, that he's kind of, I don't want to say this in a disrespectful way to him, but it's like he's grown into himself, like you see a man who is a father, who is a sort of a, who's lived through a lot. In that hug, I think, you kind of go, okay, well, this guy's, he's bringing more to the table here than just a guy's campaigning for, he's kind of embodying a lot in that hug. I guess I was somewhat surprised, but the reaction to him, he hasn't been turning up as much as publicly on the stages at these demonstrations and stuff. So we saw the great reaction to Hamed Ismailian in Berlin. Yep. And we saw, I think of around the time of Flight 752 when Nazanin Boniadi and Masih Al-Najad were in Toronto and on stage and they got, a lot of attention, and it felt like this is an example of the star power. I mean, it's a weird term to use in this moment, but that Reza Pahlavi, that's what it looked like. I mean, the screams, and he goes up on stage and everybody's cheering, and then he's got security guys around him because everybody wants to say hello, and it's like, wow, this is a lot has happened in recent months.
Yeah. Do you think it has something to do with the coalition now? I mean, I think, at least that's what I was thinking, that in part, maybe this quote-unquote star power is also being amplified by, the coalition and the recent session that they had, the 8 individuals at Georgetown, and, coming from that, perhaps.
But, to be fair, some folks have been sticking with Reza Pahlavi for a long time.
Yes.
And so it's got to be pretty cathartic. It's like, okay, finally, you know, it's, I mean, even if you love Hamed Ismailian, unless you were in his small circle that would have known him, you haven't been a supporter of Hamed Ismailian for 20 years, right? Yeah. So to a certain extent, this is like it's like the first time, Supertramp is coming to town after being a fan for a long time. It's like, oh, I get to go to the concert. I don't know. These are interesting times where everything is developing quite quickly. You mentioned the conference. Let's go to that. I mean, we've segued into the roundtable here, but we talked beforehand about how this is a great thing potentially. It's a step forward, and of course in person there was Hamed Ismailian, there was Masih Al-Najad, there was Nazanin Boniadi, there was Reza Pahlavi, and then they also had 4 people joining by Zoom or satellite or whatever you want to call it, and it seemed to go off pretty well. And then there's been a mixture of, let's face it, positive and perhaps not unsurprisingly negative discourse around this.
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of anticipated that to happen, wishfully or wishful thinking. I don't know how to put that, but I had hoped that, after this conference, it would lead to more unity. But in a way, you kind of saw a split. You saw some of the negative comments, you saw some of the positive comments, all of that. But overall, I really sat down and thought about this. And as I was watching the live stream, I was watching it off of the Facebook page. And so the comments were also going live at the same time. And it was hard not to read the comments and to see that distinction in what people were saying and who they were kind of targeting and things like that. But one of the things that actually really, really made me happy is that I think this is the first time I've ever seen on any forum where Iranians are actually engaging in more than just yelling and swearing at each other, for lack of a better way of putting it. Yeah.
It's the first time you've seen that.
There is some of that. Don't get me wrong. Not to say that some people are still not taking out, their anger on forums like that, but there were so many comments where people were following what the individuals were saying, asking questions, sharing their opinion, voicing their concerns, things like that. And I thought that was really, really great to see. So in the midst of the back and forth, there is some really great conversation and discussion that's actually being had, which is great.
Dr. Ali Fatullah Nejad, who we had on last Thursday, pointed out something that might be quite simple, but I think it's worth echoing, or as the current parlance is, amplifying in this conversation, which is that, we're currently defining disunity as, do you like this guy or this woman, or do you dislike this person, or this kind of conversation around what's the tactic, what's the plan, what's the agenda, what's the who's the leader, this type of thing. But actually, he, zooming out as an academic does, he reminded us in that interview on Thursday that he was saying disunity in the Iranian community, at least in socio-political terms, for the last 4 decades, has been between those who believe we should engage with the regime and reform or try and fix things, and those who believe we got to blow it up. That's been the primary source of disunity, again, from a socio-political point of view, not which artists you like better at your concert or something, And I thought that was such a and so judged from that point of view, this is a massive moment of unity because everybody's basically on the same page. It's just, even the lobby group that was a NIAC, there was a what do you call it, a reformist, that was their thing, has now said we want regime change.
That's right.
So now it's just what's the plan, and who's going to execute it, and who do we trust, and who do we, but the underpinning, is a political unity, which is actually pretty remarkable.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't think we could have conceived of this past, as much as I dipped into the comment section for a little bit, and then I had to get out because it kind of bothered me. But as much as I saw negativity there, about each one of these individuals and all of that, I don't think we could have conceived of last Friday and this conference a year ago.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think one of the big takeaways going back to the conference is this creation of Iran's Charter of Solidarity and Freedom that the coalition is saying that they're going to have done by the end of February. I can't even imagine what's going to be part of that and what kind of conversations are going to arise from seeing that. And, to continue on what you were saying, the further unity that we'll achieve from having something like that to present, not only to the Iranian population, whether it's inside or outside of Iran, but also to the international community at large. So that'll be something that...
how did you feel about it? Did you watch it, Shaya?
Not live, but I watched after, yeah. I think it was the first time that the opposition outside Iran, they did something smart and wise, and it was hard that you could point it out, something that goes against the revolution, and everything. For example, I really like that Ali Karimi wasn't there and Golshifteh.
Yeah,
it was really.
What did you think of what they said? It was. I thought it was interesting what Golshifteh they kind of go ahead.
That's what I'm saying. Like they clearly said that we are not politicians, but because we have followers, so we are being the voice, and so everything was, I think, very minimal, and also that was a good thing. Also, they keep it as short as they can. Yeah.
Although it did feel maybe a little thin,
Yes.
It's like it didn't feel like a deep dive into how we're going to fix Iran. It was like we'd heard everything we heard was pretty much things we'd heard before from the same people, and the next steps are going to have to there's going to have to be more substance on the bones than this. But
going back to concise but kind of to the point, I want to point out Shirin Ebadi's remarks as well. I thought there was a point where she said something, dictators say hello to the end. I think that was kind of the translation, and I thought just to hear that
say hello to the
she says
right.
Dictators say hello to the end. That was the translation. I'm sure it sounded much better in Farsi, but even just hearing that during a conference like this, after 5 months of what's been going on, the backdrop of everything, it just that part really got me emotional to hear her say that.
Why wasn't she there? Do we know why wasn't she in Washington?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
maybe she went to.
She went to somewhere. Yeah, so I mean, a very active couple of days, you know, after feeling like, I know that this notion that things were, I mean, as the Financial Times has written, with the uprising waning, and you know, ain't no waning happening in terms of what we've seen over this weekend, and there are demonstrations planned for Iran, for inside Iran, for next week. Is that, did you see those?
Actually, now that you're saying it, I think I read something about encouraging demonstrations next week. Now that it's past the Bisodoi Bahman and the anniversary of the Islamic Republic to come out. Yeah, we'll see after that.
You last week you wanted to talk about this Munich Security Conference.
Yes.
And we kind of moved along and didn't have the time. So tell us about this and the significance of it.
Yeah, so this is a conference that takes place annually. I think this is like the 59th session or something that they're having, and it's a conference to discuss security policy. So everything from traditional national or military security, but also economic, environmental, human rights, things like that. And it's usually a lot of countries, mostly those who are also part of the UN, take place. So Iran would technically be one of the countries that would typically take part in the security conference. But what's actually happened this year is that they've invited Iranian opposition figures instead of inviting the Islamic Republic. So the individuals who are invited are actually Masih Ahmadinejad and Reza Pahlavi, and so they'll be attending instead. The conference takes place on the 17th, and the only other countries who have also been excluded...
Which is on Friday.
This Friday, that's right. And the only other countries who have ever been excluded and are excluded currently are Russia and North Korea. So to give you an idea of where the Islamic Republic is headed.
And noted Islamic Republic supporters.
Yes, exactly.
Russia. And did you think it was a win that a lot of countries didn't send representatives to the support the anniversary of the Revolution Day? I mean, there was a lot of people calling for, say, European governments to not send a representative. A lot of whom didn't, and then there was a bunch of countries that did. But did that feel like a?
I think it definitely is a win. I mean, one of the things that we've talked about over the past 4 or 5 months is that, you know, we want the global community to stop engaging the Islamic Republic in any way, shape, and form. So, you know, to that point, of course, it's a win.
All right. All provocative, and there's something big in Brussels on the 20th. Right? So that's different from the Munich Security Conference. What's the Brussels thing?
That's another conference.
That's the human rights.
That's the human rights.
That's where,
And I don't have the stats on that one, but that one I think
isn't that where the foreign minister is supposed to speak, and we're supposed to turn our backs on them? Isn't that?
They're supposed to walk out. Yes,
out.
That's what's supposed to happen. That's right.
But there's a requisite, or there's a concomitant demonstration that's being planned. That's the next big one in Europe.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Pega. Thank you, Shaya. Before you guys go, let's mention that we have listen, if you've been listening to us, what are we? We're 10, 15 minutes into the show. How long are we into the show here?
29 minutes.
29 minutes. All right. So you've been listening to us for almost half an hour if you've been following along here. And that means that maybe you don't want to turn it off. You're interested enough to be with us here. So if you are somebody who enjoys what you're listening to, and if you are certainly a regular listener or part of our audience for Roqe, we would love you to become a Roqe member. And we've got our Patreon page. We stay alive by crowdsourcing. And so we've now set up a Patreon page, which means that you can become a Roqe member to support this program and our endeavors and our mission to build an audiovisual encyclopedia of the Iranian diaspora identity. Over time, you can do that very simply now. Pega, how do they do it?
They can search Roqe Media on the Patreon website, or they can go to our website and simply click the Support Us button, where that'll take them to all of the information they'll need.
RoqeMedia.com.
That's right.
And there's 3 tiers.
Yep.
You can become a monthly Roqe member on Patreon. There's 3 tiers, and you get stuff now. There's
Very
there's
exciting
there's
stuff,
some back at
actually.
you here. There's bronze and there's silver and there's gold. I
yeah.
taught Shaya back at you this weekend.
Yeah.
Can you use it, Shaya? Let me see here. Hey, Shaya, when we jammed last week, I really enjoyed your playing.
Oh, back at you. You played very well.
Yeah, you don't even have to say anything.
Back at you.
But maybe not the you. Just go back at you.
Back at you.
Yeah, there you
There
go.
you
There you go. Yeah, nicely done.
That's it.
So
actually, becoming
yeah.
a patron, you can have access to things like that and bonus content. Yeah, so
that's right.
little things that happen.
Except that was on the show.
Yeah,
So
that was
it's
around the show. But
yeah.
other examples
So
of that.
there's a bronze, silver, and gold. I mean, I think the gold Patreon, the Roqe members get a week in Hawaii with Shaya or something.
Are we adding that?
I don't know.
I didn't know that.
I know there's big prizes. There's there's exciting things.
Yes, with the gold membership, you'll have access to a live Q&A with the entire Roqe team. That's one of the highlights of the gold.
Isn't there a song of the week? Is that which tier is that?
Yeah, there's song of the week. That one I believe is with silver. That's the.
We're sounding like we don't know what we're talking about because we just launched this thing,
Yes.
but we promise that these things will exist in terms of the back at you of what you get for your bronze, silver, or gold membership. So please do. It's the point is to help support what we do here at Roqe at our Patreon page. So that's enough of that. I'll try and keep it short each show, but we're going to promote that Patreon page to you. Thank you, Pega. Thank you, Shaijun. Let's get to our first guest. Shirin Naseri coming up in the Roqe Studio in just a little bit, but let me get to our first guest. And my first guest is an Iranian-American assistant professor at Alliant International University. She is also a researcher and a licensed marriage and family therapist in both North Carolina and California. Dr. Afarin Rajaei obtained her doctorate at East Carolina University. She has been working with individuals and couples who suffer from communication issues, infidelity, parenting struggles, anxiety, depression. She has been very outspoken about the current uprising in Iran and has a popular presence in social media. And right now, Dr. Afarin Rajaei joins me from San Diego, California. Hello.
Hi, thank you for having me today.
It's a great pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for doing this.
Of course, thank you. My pleasure.
It's a fortuitous occasion to be able to ask you as an expert in the space about how this revolution is manifesting and affecting Iranians around the world in terms of our psychological and our emotional states. But first, let me just ask you a little bit about you. You were, as I understand it, a kid from Mashhad who came to the U.S. as a student only 10 years ago. You've said that when you left Iran, you pretty much knew it was going to be for good. Why was that the case?
So at that time, I love my field. So I was coming to the U.S. to continue my education. And I was very interested in the field. At the same time, I was somehow fed up with my experiences in Iran, right? I didn't have freedom like everyone else. And when I say freedom, I mean freedom of speech, all these different aspects of it, right? So I came here and I kind of like experienced a different life. When I was in Iran, I didn't feel like I belonged to society somehow because of, the different things, stories that we had there. So yeah, when I came here, I experienced a different life and I really like it.
You were saying to me in a conversation we had earlier that you had gone back to Iran a couple of times, including a couple of summers ago and last summer, and that you loved going back because you would see your family, of course. But other than seeing family, it was generally a disheartening experience for you. Can you explain why?
Yeah. In my experience, and of course that I'm just talking about my experience in Mashhad, but it was really sad to see people, even like on the streets, how angry they are, frustrated, sad. You see child labor, you see decent people, young and old, they're walking in the streets and looking for food or other things in trash bags, right? And all those different experiences, they really break my heart. And yes, the good part is like visiting your family and stuff like that. But at the same time, seeing all these different things, like zooming on them, it's really challenging and difficult. And I know that some of my friends, they go to Iran and they come back and they tell me like, oh, everything is good, right? Like people are happy. But I think sometimes like we have this narrow vision. We see only our family, you know, our couple of friends, and we don't see the bigger picture. In the bigger picture that at least I saw, people were not happy. People were sad, angry, frustrated, and life was challenging and is challenging.
It's been an interesting few months for you because not unlike a lot of people that come on the show, by the way. I mean, we just had, you know, for example, the actor Shiva Nagar, you know, last week on the show, who was saying up until this past year, she would have never thought of herself or called herself an activist, and now, you know, this is what she is almost doing 24/7. You're a doctor, you're a therapist. This is what you do. This is what you studied. But now, as a product of the last 5 months, I mean, to see you in social media, you are quite active. Sometimes somebody might say political. Tell me about what happened in September, with the killing of Mahsa Amini, with the coming of this movement, with this uprising in Iran, how this has affected you and who you have become in the last 5 months.
I think obviously, like anyone else, it has been a very difficult and challenging and painful time, right? And I think that with what happened, just in terms of, you know, my public appearance, I felt like enough is enough. And we really need to be like, this is, of course, in the past 40 something year, all the different things have been crucial and, you know, violent and challenging. But, you know, at some point you feel like enough is enough, right? So I felt that in September in terms of my public appearance. And I think that I got more active in terms of the post that I had, or, you know, how I spoke about these things. I always talked about these things in my classes with my students, even like Americans, right, about social injustice issues around the world.
But you had to make that decision around, am I going to create the conditions where I can't go back to Iran, you know, for example?
Yeah, exactly. But before that, because as I mentioned, like I wanted to visit my family in Iran, I couldn't be like that much, or I decided that I don't want to be that much public about it, about Iran specifically. But what happened with the murder of Mahsa Amini, it just made me think that enough is enough, and this is the time that we all need to be together on this journey. We all need to say, hey, this is we don't go along with this, and we need change.
I don't necessarily want to put the therapist on the couch and be the therapist, but before we get to some of the insights of what you've learned as a therapist over the last few months, I mean, can you tell me a bit about what happened to Mahsa Amini, and of course the aftermath of it, the protests, the kids being killed, the executions, all of that, how that has affected you emotionally, or how it resonated for you, how you processed it?
It's been very traumatic and very painful. And not only like the stories that we have seen, also like all of the stories that happened, they reminded of us of the things that we had experienced in the past, right? In our childhood, when we were teenagers, you know, as young people, like all these different things. But I think for me specifically, besides like going like saying that it's painful, it's been really interesting to watch and to sit with all these different emotions. Right? I was talking with one of my friends and I was telling her it's like an ocean, and each wave has its own color, like meaning like each emotion. And just it's very quite common in our lives to experience mix of emotions. But in the past 5 months, it's been just so bold and highlighted to feel sad, at the same time hopeful, and then angry, and then frustrated, and then happy, and then excited. So all that mixture of emotion, experiencing that has been really interesting to me. And, you know, as I talk with my clients, that I think that that's a kind of a common experience for most of us.
That's a great place to start. I mean, that's a great segue into asking you about some of the topics, some of the insights of what you've learned, or where you're at in terms of the psychological disposition of the global Iranian community, and how these topics intersect with us in the last 5.5 months. You know, Afarin, Dr. Rajaei, I one thing I can tell you is almost everyone who's come on this program in the last 5 months, or people I've interviewed on the streets or in Istanbul or whatever, I mean, if I am to ask the question, how are you emotionally dealing? The answer is usually that it's a roller coaster. It's up and down. It's a mixture, as you've just said, of desperate sadness and heartbreak, mixed with hope and exhilaration and energy and expectation. You posted at one point something that you've been talking about, which is that hope and fear, those two emotions that seem so polar opposite, are two sides of the same coin. Can you speak to that in terms of this duality of what Iranians are feeling, hope and fear?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So I think these emotions often exist together because they are both tied to uncertainty and unknown, right? So we don't know exactly what's going to happen, and we have all these different fears, and we are scared that what if it doesn't happen? What if it takes like X number of years, right? And at the same time, in that fear, there's this glimmer of hope that things could be different. Things will be different. Right? So then that hope and fear, they exist together. And at the same time, experiencing that can be really overwhelming, right? Because as you mentioned, it's like that mixture, that roller coaster, right? So what I find helpful is to normalize and to validate that, yes, this is, our experience right now. And it's, again, like quite common in life to have all these different feelings. And it's really important to see them, to sit with them, to process them. If you need help, to ask for help. And to take care of yourself in different ways that you can, and to take care of ourselves as a community in a ways that we can, right? So there's that individual work and community work.
Now, I'll come to the taking care of ourselves, but are hope and fear always tied together? Like, it occurs to me, if somebody's breaking into my bedroom in the middle of the night, I will feel fear. I'm not sure I'll feel any hope. And if my football team is on a winning streak, I'll feel hope that we're going to win the title. I won't feel fear necessarily. Are they always tied together?
I think when we are talking about unknown and uncertainty, yes, because again, like, you don't know about the results. And one thing that is interesting is we usually think that we take it for granted. We think that we plan for our career for the next 10 years, for our life for the next 20 years. But the truth is, I'm not sure if I'm here the next moment, right? But in situations like the revolution that we have, that uncertainty, that unknown is much bigger on the table, right? So we see that, we feel that, we are living with it every day, right? So I think it depends on the situation.
Is it a choice? Is it do you have the choice? You sort of go, I'm going to choose to be hopeful about this revolution, or I'm going to choose to be terrified that this is all going to fall apart and be worse?
I think it's a choice in terms of how much you want to focus on them. And it's a choice about the actions that you take, because when you take actions, you can be more hopeful, right? But if you just sit in those emotions, with those emotions, and then you feel like, oh, okay, this is what it is, like I'm trapped, I cannot do anything, then probably you are consciously or unconsciously choosing to experience fear more often.
You spoke a moment ago about trying to, I don't know how you put it, stay healthy or take care of ourselves. And something that you've spoken about that I've often heard in therapy or talked to my therapist about it, for example, is setting boundaries, which I see as a very personal kind of idea of who am I going to let in, who am I going to keep in my inner circle, how close am I going to get to this family member, all of those type of things that as you get older you work through and try and create these boundaries to have to navigate your way through a positive life. How does setting boundaries intersect with the being Iranian in this moment with what's going on?
Another great question. If you let me, I just go one step back. So when we are talking about self-care, a lot of times people imagine a bubble bath or, spa, going to spa, stuff like that. But self-care is actually a lifestyle that you choose. And it's about making yourself a priority at the same time that you are thinking about the common good and you are giving to people, right? So Adam Grant talks about this is we have givers and takers. So you want to be a giver, but at the same time, you want to make yourself a priority, right? So you cannot pour from an empty cup, they say, right? So, and because of that, when we are talking about a lifestyle, one important aspect of that could be setting boundaries. Boundaries are the limits or the rules that we set for ourselves in order to have healthy, happy relationships and to protect ourselves. And when I say protect, I mean physically, emotionally, psychologically, socially, all these different things. So often when I talk about boundaries with my clients, I tell them that imagine you have a house and your house has a door, right? And everyone who wants to come in, they need to knock, wait for your permission, and then they can come in, right? And sometimes in terms of boundaries in relationships, either there's no door, or if there is this door, people, they do not respect it. They just, come in. Right. And in that case, you need to highlight and promote your boundaries. So I think the way that it has to do with the conversation that we are having right now is that we are in this revolution and we want to be active, we want to participate. And in order to do that, because it's also at the same time a painful process, right? I'm not sure if we can reduce the pain, but I hope that we can reduce the harm. Because of that, we want to take care of ourselves. And because of that, self-care is important. And because of that, boundaries are important and setting boundaries. And again, setting boundaries, it can be different things, right? It can show itself in various ways, right? Sometimes it's like saying no to a project. Sometimes it's like, I need these 2 hours for myself and I don't want to talk about anything else. So different things, but you need to set your boundaries in order to take care of yourself. So you kind of like fill your tank, so you have the energy and the mental and physical well-being to continue in this process.
I imagine one way to set the boundaries would be to try to limit or try to set boundaries around how much information we're consuming, especially when it's difficult information, when it's stories about kids dying or the ongoing sort of fear of tragedy and atrocity that comes out of Iran.
One of the ways could be like that. A lot of times I have this conversation with my clients that they feel like they don't have any energy anymore and they need to just, shut down their social media for 1 or 2 days. And at the same time, they don't do that because they feel guilty, right? So this guilt does not let them to take care of themselves. And then we have this conversation that, like, of course, that we go deep, and I don't go there right now, but we have this conversation that you need to take care of yourself. You need to set that boundary. If you need that time, that 1 day, 2 day, that you need to, just be with yourself and take care of yourself. And then after that 2 days, you can come back. That's okay, because you cannot pour from an empty cup, right? You cannot.
How far do we go with setting boundaries? I mean, on the one hand, I firmly believe the dictum of don't feed the trolls. For example, don't look for negative things on the internet that are going to be toxic for you and are going to sit in your mind and make you. And that's a kind of a general rule that people have discovered that it's just not helpful to go there. But on the other hand, I feel sometimes like we're not fostering the kind of conversations that we want to have. I think of a person I know, and she and her family member profoundly disagree about ideologically about some of what's happening with this revolution. Their way of dealing with this right now is to simply not talk about it at all. Like they just don't go there, which is functional, so they can still sort of be cordial with each other and, say hello and whatever. But it seems dysfunctional because there's this huge thing happening that they're not actually talking about because they know it'll be hurtful. They so profoundly disagree. What would you tell them in that scenario?
It seems like in the scenario that you shared, they chose to not participate at all. Right? That is their decision. It seems like that. So I think that's the difference between someone who says, oh, I want to participate in this marathon, right? I want to do that. But as I'm practicing, sometimes I feel like I need to rest. Versus some people who say, oh, no, like the whole thing, I don't want to be part of it.
No. It's the opposite. One of them really is participating. The other one isn't. So they have a disagreement, and their solution, rather than yelling at each other, is to not go there, is to not talk about it. But here they are, two family members who can't talk about Iran, two Iranian women who, do you think that's the right approach?
I mean, if the other person, I'm not sure if someone like the other family member doesn't want to talk about it, I'm not sure how we can, make them to talk about it. So if that's their decision to set that boundary, to not have conversation, I can think of some brave space that you challenge people, you invite them to have conversations. But I think at the end of the day, you cannot make them to change, if that makes sense.
Well, I think that they're both very opinionated, so I think they both understand that if they were to start talking, it can get very potentially hurtful. So, but on the other hand, I feel it's weird that here's two opinionated people in the same family who are literally not talking about something.
I think we should think about what is the point of having a conversation. Is it about me telling you, I'm right, you are wrong, or do we want to understand each other, right? Because I think in the first case scenario, and you see that in like U.S. society as well, right? In a first case scenario, people just feel like they are not heard, they are not understood, and it doesn't go anywhere. And then Trump happens, right? But if we have conversation, a brave space that we tell people, hey, I'm here, I want to hear you, I want to understand you, then I think that's a different case scenario.
I think that on a macro level, that's something that the Iranian community is grappling with right now, because on the one hand, everybody says we need to be unified, or most people, that this revolution ain't going to happen unless we're all together, come on, be unified. On the other hand, we're obviously having a challenge being unified, because people end up disagreeing with each other or bickering about, I support this person, not this person. We can't bring back the prince. We have to bring back the prince, whatever it is. How do we deal with the challenge of finding unity as a community?
So I think that what we are facing these days, we are going through a corrective experience, and corrective experience is a concept that we have in therapy, meaning like when people, they had all these different traumas or past experiences, they come to therapy and we process them, we talk about them, and hopefully they get to a place that they can have a different experience. So for example, if I always felt I'm not understood, I'm not heard, I go to therapy and I talk about all these different things, and finally in therapy I feel like, oh, actually I felt understood, I felt like I'm heard, right? So because of the whole trauma that we all experienced in the past 40-something years, I think that it has been so traumatic that right now we feel like we cannot trust, we cannot, see what happened, X number of years ago, that when we trusted someone and what happened. And just imagine living in Iran and you can never trust the system, right? System does not work in your favor.
So therefore we don't trust each other. We're notoriously untrustworthy of each other.
We are wounded, right? We are wounded, and those wounds, they don't go anywhere. But right now we have a chance, we have an alternative to go through this process together, because we are going to this challenging time altogether, societal kind of grief together, right? And we have a chance to, being in this grief process is difficult. At the same time, it may bring us together. At the same time, it may give us this opportunity to have this corrective experience that yes, we can trust. Yes, we can be with each other.
When there are moments of unity, I've used this example a lot, so for people who listen to the show regularly, they might find it a little repetitious. But, for example, when we saw that massive demonstration that happened in Berlin in October, and we've had similar ones here in Toronto and in Southern California where you are, but seeing the images of that Berlin demonstration, and I don't know if you remember, it was almost set up like there was a plane, so that it was also a testament to Flight 752. And, I cried when I saw those images, and nobody that is Iranian, if you tell them that you cried when you saw that, nobody thinks that's weird. But it is kind of weird. Why am I crying looking at a group of people in Berlin? You know? And it is that catharsis that you speak of, that sort of feeling of a release, and also a feeling of, oh my God, there's a community. We are these people. I feel a part of this. I feel like and so that unity can be so powerful when we see it, in the moments that we see it. You've talked about the importance of promoting communion in dealing with social justice issues. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So communion is about the closeness and relationship quality among individuals, families, and the community, in our case, the nation, right? So it's about ensuring that people do not suffer alone throughout whatever, they're going through, right? So in our case, this traumatic experience, right? So throughout their stories. So it refers to the shared emotional experience and a sense of connection, right? And I think it's so important because what we are experiencing is a collective trauma. It's a societal grief. And for that, we need communion. We need collective recovery. We need this corrective experience.
How do we build that? How do we foster that?
I think we've been practicing that in the past 5 months, right? With the different actions that we had, the different ways that we have been there together. The tricky part about communion is it's about public action. So, Jian, when all of this, started happening in the last year, I was teaching this class at university, Diversity and the Family, and all of my students, they are Americans. So I was talking about what's happening in Iran, and one of the things that I told them is these days we see people and they are nice and they say, oh, we stand in solidarity with Iran and Iranian women. And I do appreciate that. And at the same time, I'm not sure if you just say that, how it's going to be helpful to us. So we need public action, and that public action could be anything small or big. It could be talking about these things on your social media, could be providing a brave space to your friend to talk about these things, to process these things together, could be signing a petition, going to a protest, anything, but it needs to be public action. And I think in the past 5 months, we've been practicing that. And I know that it seems like we have some challenges right now in terms of all the different things that you said, conversations, unity, but I think we are practicing and we are doing this, we are going through this societal grief and trauma together, and we show that we are there for each other.
You're feeling more hope than fear about our community?
I do. I do feel that, yeah.
What is toxic positivity? It sounds like an oxymoron. How can positivity be toxic? Tell me.
So I think it's about sometimes excessive and unhealthy focus on positivity. And I think one of the things that I see on social media and some of the conversations that I have with my clients, friends, is that, again, like that focus that, oh, but life is beautiful. Oh, but, there's meaning in all of this. Oh, but we go through all these different sufferings because of, whatever. And I feel like
is it wanting to will people to be positive and happy despite the fact that we've got this barrage of negative news coming at us? Is that the idea?
It's okay to be positive. It's not okay, I think, to just focus, just think that positivity is the only thing that we have, because I think life is not beautiful all the time. I think that there is no glory in war, in all the different sufferings that people, they go through all over the world because of, what as human doing we are doing, right? I think that is not nice and that is not beautiful. And you cannot say that there is meaning in everything. We can create meaning, make meaning sometimes out of things, right? But there is necessarily no meaning in some of these things like war, that we need to go and say, hey, it's happening because, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That is sometimes okay and possible. At the same time, if you talk with people who have been through sufferings, they would tell you that I didn't want to be strong by, experiencing XYZ, right? So I think it's not fair to think and talk like that a lot of times, and it's not helpful all the time, because then you ignore some part of your emotions, some part of your lived experience, and it's not going to be helpful to you.
I'm trying to remember the name of that animated film from a few years ago. I think it was called Inside Out, where they explore the importance of all these different emotions, including sadness. You don't have a full life without feeling sadness. When does it cross into, you say it's unhelpful. When does it cross into toxic? This idea, this imposition of positivity.
I think it's when you ignore your lived experience or part of your lived experience. When you ignore your emotions or what's happening in the world, whatever. But when you ignore some part of your lived experience, I think then that is not helpful. That is toxic.
And this is not unique to Iranians, of course, because it reminds me of growing up in England. Stiff upper lip. Don't be sad. Let's go. The war, right? And you're kind of like, well, somebody has died. How can I not be sad? This is I very much appreciate these insights. Speaking of somebody dying, I wanted to come to this before I let you go. Grieving. There seems to be a few levels of grief that Iranians, sitting in this chair talking to people the last few months from all over the world, there's such commonalities in the experience we're having. There's the grief of and mourning for people who are dying in the present. There's the grief of experiencing and thinking about the last 44 years and beyond. There's the grief of seeing people who are not living their able to live their full lives, women in Iran, as you described earlier, or young people. Talk to me about what you're seeing amongst your clients and amongst the people that you deal with in terms of grief and the Iranian community right now.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting question. So all the different things that you mentioned, and also I think grief of the life that you could have had, right? And I think that is just so deep. Also, I think one other thing that I see in my conversations is a lot of things that are going on in our society right now, and also, in the past some years. Sometimes when I have conversations with people, they tell me that this is really horrible and bad, and at the same time, I had forgotten about what happened to me when I was a teenager in my own family, right? Immediate or, big family. And this whole thing was reminding me of all the oppression and sufferings that I went through as a child, as a teenager, as a young person, whatever. So that, again, like grief of the life that I could have had, I think that's really deep. And that's something that also people go through, of course, besides all the different things that you mentioned about the violence that are happening.
That's a huge thing, that grieving the life I could have had, especially for Iranians, for all kinds of reasons. Where do you begin with someone who comes in and you identify that that's an issue for them?
I think we need to validate that experience, and the people need to be heard when they are talking about that. And then, of course, that after that we process it together, right? All the different things that they needed, right? The needs that got ignored or dismissed, and how they can work on them right now. At the same time, as I mentioned, this life is not all beautiful, right? So there are some of these things that you maybe missed in life, or all the different oppressions or experiences that you had. At the same time, we can talk about how we can use those experiences to move forward with a better life and more quality relationships.
Do you see your clients in person, or are they virtual, or are they
mostly virtual?
Mostly virtual. And are some of them in Iran?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And is there a difference between the people who are your clients in Iran and people outside of Iran?
In terms of what they're going through right now?
In terms of some of the approach, the content, yeah.
So I think it is somehow different, because they feel that the kind of oppression and obligation that they feel when they are in Iran, it's different from when you are outside. But at the same time, people who are outside, I think in my experience, they deal with a lot of guilt and shame because they are not in Iran, or because they have a good life compared to some of our friends in Iran. So those are the two things that I see a lot.
It's a great pleasure getting to talk to you. I hope we can do this somewhat regularly. It's the insights are so important. What's the greatest challenge for you these days in the work that you do?
One of the challenges, I think, is I am also going through this as I'm helping people, or as I try to help people. And sometimes that is challenging. And sometimes people, they come to you because all of us, when we are in pain, we just want to get rid of the pain, right? Because it's just so difficult. And I wish I had something to offer you, like a pill or something in prescription that you do, and suddenly the pain is vanished. But there's no such thing, right? I always talk about like going through a tunnel, right? So this tunnel is just painful right now. But I think that there's hope, there's light at the end of the tunnel. And going through this tunnel is difficult and is painful. But let's talk about the different ways that we can reduce the harm, right? Not just the pain. Let's see how we can sit with the pain, with how we can get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Which, when I talk about it, it's easy. Of course, that in practice, it's difficult.
Do you have a therapist?
I do. Yeah, sure.
Does your therapist have a therapist?
Yes. Actually, she has.
we all. Is your therapist Iranian?
No.
No. And because as you were speaking, I was thinking, you're absolutely right. You're somebody who is going through this, so you bring that direct empathy. But on the other hand, maybe there's an effectiveness to somebody not being Iranian counseling us. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
It can be, right? So I think there are like pros and cons, you may say, right? So it can be, and at the same time, sometimes I think the sessions that I have, it could be like somehow like group therapy, but like there can be one or two people, but like group therapy in terms of let's talk about this together, right? We've been through this together.
I don't want to lapse into extreme positivity here, or toxic positivity, but one of our guests when we did our little documentary in Istanbul in early November, she said she sees this revolution as a collective healing for the global Iranian community, and with all of the good and bad that comes with that, the lumps and the bumps that come with that. Does that resonate for you when I say that?
I think so, yeah. I think it can be a collective healing. At the same time, it doesn't mean that it's not painful. It's not traumatic at some part, right? So I think we can experience both of them together.
Will the outcome affect the healing? I mean, if I don't know, hypothetically, the regime stays in Iran and things get worse, does that upend our whatever healing has happened?
That's a tricky question and difficult. I think it depends on many factors, but I think in terms of like, because we are in this together, the communion is there, right? So I think no matter what happens,
we found each other.
We found each other, that communion, that unity. The fact that like we try to interrupt the flow of business as usual, right? Because every oppressive system feeds on silence, and we didn't stay silent. We are not silent. We are showing them that we are not going along with this. And I think that is huge for all of us, because we've always been told that, be quiet, be a good girl, good, boy, just, do whatever they tell you. And right now we are not doing that.
Thank you so much. I know some of these questions are actually impossible questions to answer. How do we fix unity in the Iranian community? Go, give me it in 1 minute. But you did great, and I think I'm sure people who've been listening along I'm sure this is going to inspire a lot more conversation. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the education, and I look forward to having you back on again. Merci.
Thank you. Pleasure is all mine. Thank you for having me.
Khodafez.
Khodafez.
This is Roqe, episode 238, Hope and Fear, Two Sides of the Same Coin. My next guest is a longtime friend of our program, and she has walked into the Roqe Studio here. An Iranian-British TV personality, producer, neuro-linguistic programming coach, and social media influencer. You may know Shirin Naseri from her very popular online presence or from her unmistakable energy and charm that was on display for a few years at the Iranian TV network Manoto. Now Shirin has a new gig at Afghan International, and she has, of course, been very outspoken about the situation in Iran since the killing of Mahsa Amini. She has made it to Canada here for the first time in her life, just for a few days, and we are lucky to take advantage of this and have her here and right now. Shirin Naseri joins me in the Roqe Studio in Toronto. Hello.
Hi, Jian.
Welcome. Khosh omadi.
Merci. Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you. I mean, this is your first time ever in Canada.
Indeed.
You made it to the colonies.
I made it.
Right,
yes.
right. From the heart of England, from London. How does it feel to be in Canada? What is your first impression?
I'm very interested in I had no idea it will look like this. It's completely different from what I expected.
What did you anticipate?
I expected everywhere to have to be houses, not tall buildings.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
To be honest with you, and
had you not looked at a picture of Toronto before?
No.
Okay. All right.
I mean, I'm sorry for my ignorance, but I was never interested in.
Oh. What a perfect thing to say on your second day in Canada. Yeah. Already winning fans here.
No, now I am very, very much interested, and I will come here another time for just pleasure.
Because you are just working here for a few days.
Correct.
Have you had the chance to go to Toronto yet?
Not yet, but tonight I think I'm going to.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to blow your mind. Because I know we have that North Finchley or whatever in London. That's a little Persian area, but this is... this will blow your socks off. You'll think.
I look forward to it. I'm actually excited. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a little bit about what's happening in Iran and how you've been dealing with all that. But let me ask you about your new gig. You're working for Afghan International, which is a TV network similar to and tied to Iran International.
Correct.
First of all, how does it feel to be working at Afghan International?
It feels good. It feels great. I'm very looking forward to the first project I'm going to produce for them is for Nowruz, which is great. And do you know what? It's after these many years being away from media or television production mainly, because I have been on different video productions projects, but this is after 3 years, I think. I'm back to TV. I'm very, very excited. Like, oh my God, I know this area, this field. I am familiar with it. I can do it. So, and because this time is fully, I am full-time producer, not worrying about presenting or anything.
Oh, you're not on camera?
No.
You're wow, okay.
Yeah.
You're producing. Now you're not from Afghanistan.
No.
You're not Afghan.
No.
So I imagine one of the things that you're going to have to do for this job is to make sure that you're in touch with and identifying what the Afghan community is all about and reflecting them accurately. How do you do that? Or how are you doing that?
Well, I am lucky because I think maybe, let's say 1% of my followers are from Afghanistan. They're Afghan people. So I'm in touch with them. For example, I was looking for musicians. So I put on my story, I'm looking for Afghan musicians. And I received one message maybe, which is great. But I'm working very closely to my colleagues at the company, at the television, who are Afghans. They bring in the resources. So that's the main way. And once you connect with an artist, then you have access to other
artists.
Yeah. It's like a chain.
This Nowruz is, it's going to be a weird one, I think. I suspect. I mean, I still don't know exactly what's happening. How I don't even know how we're supposed to approach it. On the one hand, there are certainly people who think there should be no Nowruz celebrations this year. On the other hand, there are people who are planning galas in Toronto, and there are, and at that conference that they held on Friday, a couple of Hamid Ismailioun and Masih Alinejad both made the point to say we should have concerts, we should be able to bring some semblance of normalcy, that we have good and bad times, etc. I don't know if that translates into Nowruz galas, but how are you processing that? First of all, I guess it's a different dynamic, in particular with the Afghan community, but tell me about the politics around this.
Okay, so I'm going to first make my comment about Iran and Nowruz, and then Afghanistan and Nowruz. With Iran, it's very interesting you pointed out about what Ismailioun and Masih talked about, because once they said that, I actually was happy that they mentioned it, because whether I and everyone else likes it or not, they are the voices of all of us.
A couple of the voices, anyway.
One of many, or a couple of many. And I think that's kind of gave a little bit of affirmation to people. Right, so we will not feel horrible if we live. I won't, because I didn't allow myself to talk about these, having normal life or anything. I still don't, because it's not going back to normal until we are victorious.
You personally, for the years that I've known you, for example, you're a dancer, you love dancing. Sometimes you would just post videos of you dancing around joyously in your kitchen or something. You haven't done that in the last 5.5 months, and I understand why. Maybe you don't feel like it, but also if you did, some of your followers are going to say, "What are you doing? There's kids dying, right?" So there's a line to walk, right?
Yes, but in terms of Nowruz, I don't do that because I don't feel like it. I dance for myself still, to keep my mental health going, balanced.
Good.
Yes, and I have been I've gone live, and I've tried to alleviate people's uplift their feelings and emotions through another way, but not through dancing. Maybe I would just do some comedy dance moves or whatever to make them laugh. But I'm not going to dance as if nothing's happened. With Nowruz, I believe we must celebrate it.
You do?
Yeah. Not gala style.
Okay. What style?
Just it's an ancient tradition, Iranian, Persian tradition. It should be celebrated. It should be respected. It's part of our culture. It's part of our real culture. Because, throughout the whole demonstration, when I went to one of the demonstrations in Trafalgar Square, the first ones, this Muslim woman from Egypt approached me, and she hugged me, and she was like, "I understand, da 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 da," and she was like, "I know, because hijab is part of your culture." I was like, "That's where you're wrong. Hijab is not our culture. This is why we are here. But Nowruz is our culture."
And by the way, correct me if I'm wrong, but in Iran, this regime, the Islamic Republic, is not that hot on Nowruz, right?
No,
it's not a big thing that Raisi is going to be promoting.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's another reason. Because if we allow this regime, they would be more than happy to eliminate the whole Nowruz thing. So I don't think that we should allow that. We should celebrate this time, but not at a gala. Is that what you're saying? I always have a problem with galas.
Okay, separate from this. But no, it is a tough one, right?
Yeah.
Because there is something that feels, I don't know, I'm unsure, but I don't even know if I'd want to, dress up and do a kind of almost act in some sort of like you're suppressing some of your thoughts about what's going on to go to a gala and with fabulous centerpieces and a DJ playing really loud. And on the other hand, people should do what they want and
Exactly.
and not necessarily be. I mean, if somebody's coming out to demonstrations and doing what they can to support the people of Iran and donating and whatever, and says, listen, I want to go out and have a night of shadi, fun.
Yeah.
I mean, who are we to say no? So I'm confused about it myself.
I think do what you feel is right for you. And we don't need to shout out, like take pictures and post videos about what we are doing. That's something we need to be considerate of. We have to have empathy, and we have to think about what will make me feel good and healthy and balanced right now. Do I need happiness? Do I need dancing? I will dance, but I will not going to say, oh, people of Iran, listen, I'm dancing with this fancy dress and all of that. Yeah.
But in our culture, predating the Islamic Republic, our culture, we take mourning pretty seriously. I mean, I at least growing up, when a family member or somebody close to us would die, very sadly, we wouldn't have a big Nowruz celebration that year. We wouldn't be, our family would be quite muted, in terms of what we, and so if we zoom out from that and say we're mourning for for the people of Iran or for the people who've died in the last 5 months, then there is some kind of responsibility to not be dancing around and with too much glee, right?
I would say, when we say celebrate Nowruz, I don't mean to ignore what's happening. And I am sure, even if, like, let's say a family is mourning for their loved ones who they've lost, they will still put Hafsin on. They should, and if they don't, fine, it's their decision.
Okay, yeah.
But it will not mean that they are neglecting the fact that they lost a loved one. And personally, I believe that we must, if we want to respect our loved ones, we must take care of ourselves in terms of having some okay moments, happy moments.
Right.
Yeah.
If we completely ruin our lives, the terrorists have won in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you do as the producer then? First of all, can everybody see Afghan International?
Online? Yeah, it's the same as Iran International.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it's got an online presence. What are you going to produce for the Afghan Nowruz special?
Well, so with Nowruz in Afghanistan and Iran, the difference is that Iran is going through this kind of revolution right now. So the whole style is going to be appropriate for that. And the same it applies to Afghanistan. But with Afghanistan is that Taliban is against music.
Right.
They say music is haram.
I was going to say Afghanistan is not the bastion of democracy in contrast to Iran either, right? Yeah.
No, yeah. And they say music is haram. And women what happened with women's education and everything. So we are going to...
No big fans of Afghan International, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely, Taliban. They are not, yes. So what we are doing what is being planned is to just make it loud as possible that music is important, is part of the Afghan culture, is one of the main things to keep your hopes high and all of that. So we're covering all sorts of types of music in Afghanistan, dialects, languages, all of that. Yeah.
You're here interviewing musicians in India but you're based out of London still.
Correct.
Tell me about where you've been at. The last time we had you on we had you on the program early on, I think, in the uprising. It was in a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks after.
You didn't. You even asked me whether it's a revolution or not, and I said it was a revolution.
You did.
Remember?
In the first couple of weeks, it was everybody. We didn't know, right?
Yeah.
Tell me how you would characterize the last 5.5 months for you, Shirin, because obviously people who keenly follow you on social media will have seen some of your emotional ups and downs. You're very candid. You're very open. You open yourself up in terms of your platforms. But how would you characterize it, looking back to the last few months since the killing of Mahsa Amini? For you.
Okay, for me it was definitely exactly what you saw of me on social media was true, because I was up and down. Like one day I was extremely hopeful and motivated and like determined to, how can I say, like invite everyone to feel what I'm feeling. And one day I was angry with the way people are reacting, we are reacting, and one day I was very hopeless. But the hopeless part, I would say, it was just like 2% of the time.
Okay.
And you need to zoom in and zoom out throughout your life all the time with everything. Once you zoom in, if you want to get motivated, you should zoom out. If you want to find...
Are you doing neuro-linguistic coaching right now? Is that what's happening?
You got it.
What does that mean? If you need to say that again?
If you need to get motivated about any goal...
You should zoom out?
You should zoom out.
What does that mean practically?
It means that, let's say we are looking at 1 week throughout the whole timeline. In the past week, I don't know, whatever has happened, could be a negative thing, would be a positive thing. But once you hit disappointment and hopelessness, you can zoom out and see how much we have achieved and how much we are going to achieve.
Yes.
And then it will be like, okay, in the long run, we are going to win.
Yes. Yeah. I was telling somebody on the weekend about last Thursday, we had the academic Dr. Ali Fatullah Najad on the show. And he, as academics do, he zooms out, as you've just said. And so he was giving a perspective on, I said, is this a revolution? And when did it start? And, and he says, it's 5 years. It's been 5 years in the making. We've been in the revolutionary process, basically dating it back to since the time when the majority of Iranians, now almost universally Iranians, certainly in the diaspora, believe in there's no reform of this regime. We need to overthrow the regime, etc. He considers that the hallmark of our unity. And it's so true when you zoom out like that. So he's like, yes, we're on the way. This is a revolution. Then you don't get as caught up in what we might say the day trading of what happened today. That there was an execution, there wasn't a rally. The rally was too small. And also you don't get sort of overconfident when one good thing happens or something either. You kind of know that it's a process and a marathon, not a sprint, and all those things we've been saying. So that's interesting. So when are you able to do this? We've just had this psychologist on. Are you able to personally practice this zooming in, zooming out when you have a bad moment or a bad day? Are you able to zoom out?
Yes, I have. خودمو عادت دادم به این موضوع.
You've taught yourself.
I've taught myself, and yes, now it's anchored in me. It's another term I just dropped there. Yes, with everything I do that now, which is really helpful. I suggest you try that. It's like, and then to keep the balance, you should remember to zoom in as well. Because once you zoom out, you're like, maybe you will get emotionally disconnected from certain things. That's when we should say we won't forget. Zoom in, don't forget. But zoom out to keep going.
Do you remember a moment recently where you practiced this? What the issue was?
I don't exactly remember what it was, but I remember I messaged my girls in our my girlfriends group chat box, WhatsApp group, and I was really feeling down and scared of everything that's happened. But so that's one of the means for me to get myself out of that mood. I just said that. I said, guys, I'm feeling like this. What if this? What if that?
Knowing that they would reassure you somehow?
Yes. And Maral, which is one of my amazing best friends, she was one of them. She was like, yes, so we help each other, we remind each other. That's a way to zoom out and zoom in. So I have like a first aid kit, emotional first aid kit. And one of them is when I feel helpless. Yes, I use one of the things in my kit, which one is the friends.
How did you feel? I know you have a pretty big, large audience, and you talked about this a little bit. Give me the perspective now, last month there was that activity in the diaspora around the petition to, it's hard to even what words to use, but to endorse Reza Pahlavi or not as as our authority or something to oversee the transition. That was something that you were quite involved in terms of talking to your followers and an audience and trying to grapple with. What do you think of that whole episode now?
That was very interesting, first of all. I waited one day. I just didn't say anything because everyone was like, what is your opinion? What is your opinion? And I read every post people shared about that. And then...
And I imagine amongst your followers, there's a lot of different opinions.
Oh, certainly.
Different followers of different...
One group was waiting to unfollow me if I don't endorse that, right? One group was waiting to see.
Great.
It's very interesting. But I love the way I communicate. I think my relationship with the main followers I have is really good because they know me. That's the main population I really care. They know me. They know that Shirin is not going to endorse anything and be like, this part is good, this part is bad. So with that, I was even talking to my friends. I was like, guys, should we endorse? Should we not endorse? So after that, only...
You genuinely weren't sure.
I was genuinely...
You don't have you're not someone who has a particular, so to speak, horse in the race. I'm a devout follower of this person or something.
No one in my, even like, I try to say that any chance I get. I never put my belief in a human, the whole belief. You shouldn't in anything, because that can lean towards extremism. Extremism, yeah. And no, I said that.
Is that to say that we don't need a human, though?
No.
Do we not need a human to ultimately? I don't know. Do we need one person to? You said you don't want to put all your confidence in one person.
Yeah, I'm just saying. And I still say no one person, a team. I was like, guys, I like Reza Pahlavi. I like him, and he has the looks, he has the talks, he has the everything. But it doesn't matter if it's Reza Pahlavi or another person. If there's one person, I'm not going to put my whole future and destiny in one person's hand, because that's not going to work. And it applies to anyone. So we need everyone to put their brains into one thing and talk about, which is happening right now.
Did you feel good about this? Like on the Friday, there was we were just talking about it on the roundtable. There was the conference that happened with some of these so-called opposition leaders, and I mean, there's a lot of people who are excited about it, and as with our community, there's a lot of people who are attacking it. Everything from I don't like this person wasn't good enough. There wasn't, they're all Nyack. I don't know, So I mean, how did you process what happened on Friday?
I think it was a good thing. It was not a negative thing. It did contribute to the whole process of the revolution, and it will. And it was a huge, in my opinion, it was a huge milestone. Right? And there's always criticism. Always. You can never make everyone happy. So that's normal. That's absolutely normal, and it's understandable. Again, zoom out. It's a milestone, because we've been waiting for this. Now we are now criticizing that. Everyone was saying we want this.
That's right.
What's going on?
As I was saying to a few people, we can't all say we want unity and then complain when there's attempts for unity, and allowing some different people in the room that not everybody's going to agree with.
Some people say it was a beautiful, in quotation, demonstration. Yes, okay. What else? What did you want that you didn't receive?
Do you
be
think,
vocal about it?
Shirin, with given that you have that big following, and you say you sort of understand them, you have a dialogue. I mean, do you actually think that we are capable of coming together?
Yes.
For a new Iran?
Yeah, and I'm going to share something that's an unpopular opinion. Maybe this is going to raise something in your social media. Maybe. Before the
you You? I've never known you to say something was all right. Go ahead.
What was I gonna say? Babine, you distracted me. No. Right before the killing of Mahsa Amini and our revolution, and I was vocal about it as well. I never had any hopes for future of Iran, and I wasn't emotionally attached to. Yes, I have mentioned things about that. Yeah. Now
you were on our documentary in London saying I don't identify with the Persian community.
Exactly. But now I love our people. Love them, even the ones that I don't like.
So what happened? You're not alone. A lot of people have said this, that they've, I mean, in different ways. I've refound my Iranian pride and all of that, and we owe it to the young people of Iran who've been, who've changed things. But
I'm getting emotional because we've been through so much. Like, woof! Iranian people have been through so much that I can understand everyone. I can understand everyone. And we deserve a normal life. That's it.
Yeah. When you're getting emotional like that, where's your mind going?
It's like the girls and boys we've seen. It's like Iran is like a Ganj چی میشه? Treasury of talent, knowledge, potential, beauty, and we have the chance, and I'm not going to let go of that. Like, this is the only chance we have. Even the Islah Talaban, like, I don't know what's that in English again.
The reformists.
Reformists, yes. Even they are now on the boat with us. Like, no, like before that, people were like, maybe Khatami is handsome. We thought that, like, or Rouhani is going to allow musicians do this, yeah. And some people would say, no, you can't deal with mullahs. Now everyone knows that, and we know that. It's not like, oh, we doubt it.
But how did you go from, within the course of a year, from I don't like to be too involved in the Persian community to this kind of I love the whole community, even the ones I don't like. It's a great line.
So what was your question again?
How did you go from what changed?
What changed? The unity. It's like suddenly we decided all to understand and open our arms to learn, to listen.
I hope so.
I've seen that. There's a change of language. There's a change of behavior in the way people speak now. I have a term I've named the spams on my live, right? I've named them something that is probably not, people are not gonna like it. It's funny. Should I say it?
Sure.
Goose to the hand.
Okay. Yeah.
Fart in the mouth.
Yeah.
And in my lives now, I rarely get goose to the hand because they're all sepahi.
But people are angry.
Yeah.
And sometimes it seems to me that anger is manifesting itself and attacking one personality or some, especially, I mean, I was surprised. I didn't wade too much into the comments and stuff after the Friday, but I was surprised by the amount of negativity. And I don't even know who these people are. Maybe it's cyber bots from the regime. I don't know, but the amount of there has to be disagreement in the community. That's good. Why not?
Exactly.
Conversation. Let's see,
Absolutely.
But the amount of really negative kind of stuff, this person belongs to this party, and this person is
there.
Yeah,
it's always been there. And you know what? After this, I messaged Messi, and I said, we know each other, like Messi, and through television and everything. And I said, I am so happy and proud of myself that I stood by my word. I had many close friends all the time throughout these years saying, Shirin, she Masih, felane, this and that, such and. I was like, I hear you, but give me some something you can prove. You say these things. You show me just a picture that Masih has maqneh next to Khatami. We all were at that time. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Pretty much everyone was
that
a reference, except maybe Reza Pahlavi. Yeah.
So
you're happy with Masih now. You're proud of her.
I always was proud of her. I always was proud of her. But I said it to herself as well. Like, I understand why she's not as popular as some are, which is
why
okay.
Is that?
Because of many things. Because of the fact that one is that the society or the cultural thing is used to see a feminine certain image for a woman who wants to be popular, right?
It's breaking stereotypes.
Yeah. And if she doesn't fit into that category or frame, people are going to be, nah. Or just because she's from some rusta or village, and then again, dude, can you do something like she's done?
First of all, she's indefatigable. Her energy, I don't know how this person has this.
Mashallah.
Yeah, exactly. But it's remarkable.
Yeah.
Every day she's out there. I mean, I don't know how. It's remarkable stuff.
And I've lost thousands of followers. Every time I say something about that, I see, I lose followers. I don't care. Because I don't say something that I don't believe. If you can convince me otherwise, I will listen to you. And if you can, fine, then I will say it. And I'm not afraid of saying, I made a mistake. Nah, I said it and I will say it. And everyone should do that. And that's something Masih does. So she used a wrong hashtag. She apologized for it. Aghay Reza Pahlavi, he corrected something. I don't remember exactly. But this is great. Like, we are learning.
How before I let you go, tell me a little bit about what the vibe has been like in London. You've been to the demonstrations there. I remember early on you were saying it feels a little divided, and I'm not sure.
Yeah.
How do you feel like the Iranian community in London has been rallying?
So it was divided. Like the first 2 days after killing of Mahsa, I was just like, what should I do? And I don't live in London. I just suddenly decided, I was like, I will go. Even there was no announcement or anything. I was the only person.
And somebody yelled at you or something, right?
Somebody from the Shah
monarchists.
Monarchist fans. It was very interesting. It was like there was no picture of Mahsa. All pictures of the Pahlavi dynasty, which is fine. Okay. Don't kill me.
Hey, people. Man, this weekend.
Yeah.
It's like a rock star.
So so
people love Reza Pahlavi.
That's fine. And he kept coming towards people who were joining me. I was like, come join us. Let's unite. I was like, mind your tone. If you want to unite, mind your tone. Don't shout at me. But then, as we moved forward, there was a unity. It was great. And I wasn't in the demonstrations last weekend, 22 Bahman. I wasn't in London. I was actually on my way here.
Yeah. Last week, I mean 2 days ago.
Yeah. And but I was told that the monarchists took over again, and it's interesting. It's like they don't want to listen. They're like, خیلی خوب, you are in love with this concept. Nobody is saying don't be, but don't let other people have a voice too.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to them, they've been at it for a long time.
Yeah.
So feels like a moment. Here we are. We finally got to a place, and now we can express ourselves. It is really interesting to me, though, that having attended the two demonstrations in Toronto on Saturday, and seeing footage of the other ones, Paris and LA and as much as we know there are supporters of all kinds of people. The one picture that you see at the demonstrations, I guess they're more organized, is Reza Pahlavi.
Yeah.
I mean, people hold signs that say, I endorse Reza Pahlavi is my representative. I don't see that for some of the other folks. Yeah. I mean,
it's understandable again, because he comes from this background, established background. We are not going to say, I vote for Shirin because she's nobody. Like I don't know her father. That's normal. It's like...
You think that kind of lineage means something to somebody who's established that allows somebody to have a pedigree. We kind of, and it's true. We do know, no matter what your opinion, people know. We know his mom. We know his dad. We know the family, and there's something comforting about that.
It's very important in our culture. It's very important who your parents are in every matter, in every situation. Even if you are having a suitor, they will say, what is your dad and mom's job, right? Which shouldn't matter, in my opinion. So because it's part of our culture, then he's the only person who has got that.
Yeah. I've been saying this as well, though. I think he's acquitted himself very well in the last 6 months.
And I love
said he's been so good about trying to be inclusive and trying to, I mean, it's hard to be in the kind of spotlight that he's in and not make a lot of missteps. And he's just been very, I think a lot of people have come around because like, this guy's, it seems to be, he doesn't want to be the leader, he says, and he wants to help, and he's,
Yeah, exactly. And at this point, doesn't matter who says, I mean, if people say, I want Reza Pahlavi to become our Shah, okay, you want it, but you're not going to get it because he doesn't. And I hope that Reza Pahlavi one day comes on a platform and says, guys, please listen to me. I say, Zan Zandagi Azadi, you keep saying Javid Shah. At least show some respect if you really respect me. Like, respect this guy, guys.
Yeah, he has been saying things that I feel like some of the followers don't necessarily.
Yeah, he has mentioned it once. I think I heard
a
once.
lot. He says, "Come on, accept other viewpoints.
Yeah.
Let's go for unity, etc." It has been. Look at you here, face to face in the Roqe Studio, in the human form, not just the virtual form. I hope you get to enjoy and exploit Toronto and check out the Persian community just for your own experience here. And it's so nice to have you here. Good luck with this new gig with Afghan International.
We'll
be watching, and as ever,
Thank you.
It's wonderful to have you on the program.
Likewise. Merci.
Merci, Shirin Jo.
Shirin
Naseri here in the Roqe Studio. Thank you to her. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Dr. Afarin Rajaei for being here. This is full time for Roqe for today. And a big thank you to the amazing team who put this show together. Roham, Anahita, Parisa, Pega, Mehrdad, and Shaya. Thank you to all of you out there for supporting us and sharing our content. Please do subscribe on any of our platforms if you haven't done so already. And remember, you can become a Roqe member at our Patreon page, which you can link to from our website, roqemedia.com. You can find me on Instagram at Jian Ghomeshi. In the meantime, as ever, Mizun Bashi.